Morning.
I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting of the Law School Council. Welcome all the members and State Bar staff. Teresa, could you please take roll call to determine if there's a quorum?
Susan Bachian is not present. Mary Basic,
I'm here.
Lindsay Harrington,
Present.
Kris Don,
Present.
Devin Kenyon,
Present.
Nagin Miragabi.
Present.
Did I pronounce your last name
You
close?
did. Beautifully. Thank you so much for asking.
Carly Sassy.
I'm here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Our next is going to be our call for public comment. Members of the public can make a written public comment submitted to the lsc@calbar.ca.gov email box. Written comments received by 9 a.m. on Tuesday are distributed to LSC prior to the meeting, and comments received after that time are forwarded after the meeting. Verbal comments of up to 2 minutes will be taken now, first recognizing any individuals who signed up in advance using the link on the agenda, or by raising hands using the raise hand function on a computer or *9 on a phone. Staff will share a timer on the screen during the comments. Before we begin public comment, I would like to remind everyone that under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, public comments must pertain to items that are on the agenda or be related to matters that we have within the jurisdiction of this agency. I believe that we have received one written comment that was distributed to the council. And now, Teresa, do we have anybody waiting to make a public comment live?
We do. We had 2 advanced signups. The first phone number ending in 3350, who I do not see in attendance. And our second advanced signup was Sean Eshelman, who I also don't see in attendance, although if you are here, you may raise your hand. I'll just give a moment. Okay, with that, I'd like to move on to the public comment that was not advanced sign up, and we have one individual. Mr. Kai On, your microphone has been enabled.
Good afternoon, all committee members, all council members. Sorry, my name is Kai On from Sacramento. I would like to share an unusual incident for State Bar. Sacramento DA office and SPD provide me fake information. DA case number 99F0X735. Mr. Jung So Fong hit and run kill my father Woon Kong On. Sacramento City Council even used a UC Davis internship student to email me a fake police report. I went to UC Davis and submitted a letter to UC Davis Law School Dean, and I also protested at the Sacramento McGeorge Law School. However, both law schools did not help to uphold justice. I also complained Attorney General Mr. Robert Bronter and Sacramento DA Mr. Tien Ho because they did not investigate. However, State Bar closed my complaint without any action. It seems someone is trying to cover up a law enforcement scandal 26 years ago. All council members, you serve the State Bar to keep a healthy and integrity legal system. However, State Bar is helping to cover up a scandal. Please share this incident with other law school, other legal profession, and also address the issue to the public to let all the people know. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your public comment.
Oh yeah, Teresa, are there any other people waiting to make a comment?
We have no further public comments.
Thank you. Before moving on, I just wanted to make a note that we do have a special set item today. Item 6.2 will take place at 1:15 p.m. today until 1:30 p.m. To accommodate the presenter schedule. It will focus specifically on the PEAK program. Then in the staff reports, we will talk about all three mindset programs, BAR strategies, formerly called BAR strategies and stories, PEAK, and Reset, the retaker support group. Now we will move on to the chair's report. I just briefly want to welcome our new members, Nagin and Lindsay. I've had the opportunity to speak with you and gained a lot of knowledge from you already. I look forward to having you as part of the council. I was thinking about the agenda. We do have a packed agenda today, and I think it just demonstrates the wide scope of issues that the Law School Council touches, and that, as a personal, having been on the council now for about 5 years, I just appreciate the opportunity for us as a council to be at the state bar table, especially at a time when the future of the bar exam is being decided. So I look forward to this upcoming year. With that, I will now turn to the staff reports.
Thanks, Kris. I just have a very short general report. The first one is an update from our communications department. The website will be undergoing a refresh, tentatively scheduled for December 16th here at the State Bar. We think that this is a good time. It is sufficiently far out from the bar exam. It is sufficiently out after the release of results, and it may be a quiet time, a transition time in the law schools, but just know that while the information will remain the same, it will look different. And to the extent your teams have time to just take a look before students come back for the new term and are asking questions, then that would be greatly appreciated. We also want to let you know that since you last met, we had our annual registrars meeting. We always love to get your feedback about that meeting and how it can go. We brought together 55 people from the registrars teams here in California to talk about issues of interest to the registrars, in particular updates to our applicant portal system that students and graduates use. We talked about how to customize the law school declaration process to make it easier for the registrars to handle, as well as the resources we have online. And we also handle general questions for students. We usually ask them two things. We ask what they'd like to talk about in the meeting, and then we also ask the top students that they're getting from questions and whether or not they knew the answers so far. Because even when they know the answers, if they're continuing to get a question from students, it makes us look at our communication policy to see if we should be communicating in more or different ways. So this is just one of the additional ways that we engage with law schools, and we're interested in your ideas for topics and keeping you updated with what else we are doing. So thank you for the chance to talk about that. Okay, and then our next item is to discuss the schedule for this year. So I'll turn it over to Teresa. You'll notice that we've added an extra meeting this year to have enough time to talk about the many issues and opportunities with the bar exam for 2028 and beyond. Teresa.
Give me 1 second while I pull up my screen. I wanted to show everyone where you can find our meeting schedule and also to let the public know where you can find all sorts of information about the Law School Council. So this is just on our website. You can go to About Us, so it's calbar.ca.gov, About Us, who we are, and then in the committee section, you can find the Law School Council. And here, if you'll click on calendar, you'll be able to see our calendar for this upcoming cycle in just a moment when it pops up here. As Natalie mentioned, we are going to have 3 meetings this year, which is a little different from previous years, and that will give us a little extra time or an extra session to talk about the bar exam. Of course, now seems to be the moment where the Wi-Fi is going quite slowly. Here we go, just as I say it. There we go. So you can see the schedule here. It clarifies that all of our meetings are going to be between 1 to 3 p.m. in the Zoom format. So today is, of course, the December 11th date, and we will have 2 further meetings next year on February 18th and June 17th. And I also just wanted to show you a couple other things on this Law School Council page while I have you here. I wanted to let members and the public know that you can subscribe down at the bottom of the page to our email list, and this will let you know when our agendas are posted. So they're posted 10 days in advance of the meeting. And you can also click upcoming meetings to see all of the upcoming meetings at the State Bar. So this would show you not just the Law School Council calendar, but also any other upcoming meetings. And finally, we can also see the roster. So we do have new members this term, and you can check out this page to see who our members are, our chair position, and of course, we thank the members here for their service. Any questions about this webpage or signing up for alerts for our meeting schedule? No? Okay, thank you. In that case, I will turn it over to, I believe, Cody.
Yep, thank you so much, Teresa. I've got a few updates. I'll start with item 2.3, which is a report on the 2026 admissions fees. Just to take one step back, in October 2025, we presented at that time for our CS Bars members. So this may be the first update that we've been bringing to Law School Council. At that time, we were providing an update regarding the staff recommendation to the Committee of Bar Examiners and the Board of Trustees that various admissions fees be increased in 2026. This was at the direction, the exploration was at the direction of the board and the Committee of Bar Examiners, who just prior to that had determined that the status of the admissions fund was quite fragile, particularly given the and unanticipated cost related to remediating some of the issues faced at the February bar exam, and then of course a return to in-person testing for the foreseeable future, which has been kind of growing in cost over the years. By the November board meeting, the board was considering a staff recommendation to raise admissions fund fees of various types, and ultimately what the board approved was to do just that, except for two very important categories. So the board determined that California bar exam related fees for general applicants, our non-attorney test takers, should not be increased by the recommended amount. And similarly, fees for those who participate in the practical training of law students, the PTLS program. So instead, those two areas of fees were increased by the Consumer Price Index adjustment, which is about 3%. As a reminder, essentially the Board of Trustees reviews all fees every 3 years, and then in interim years, it makes adjustments based on the CPI. So essentially the general applicant fees for the bar exam and the PTLS program fees were just adjusted in alignment with that policy, but not the larger increase that was recommended to help kind of shore up the admissions fund. And just to share kind of some insight from the board's discussion, because there was quite a robust discussion about this, the board really was trying to find a balance between strengthening the financial health of the admissions fund and avoiding kind of undue financial burden on students and aspiring attorneys. They recognize that perhaps increases elsewhere in the admissions fund could try to keep fees lower for these unique populations. So ultimately, that is what the board approved. Those fees will be taking effect January 1st, 2026. So we will have published on the State Bar's website an updated fee schedule, and wherever fees are kind of automatically placed in our platform, whether it's the applicant portal or some of our other software, all of those will be updated and go into effect starting January 1st.
Rudy,
Are there any
thank you.
questions? Oh, go ahead, Natalie. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, please take questions.
No, if there's any questions, I'm happy to address them. Okay, Natalie, now I'll hand that to you for the next item.
Oh, I think we're ready to receive our guest. I'll turn it back to the chair to welcome Kris Evans.
Great.
Yes, I would like to welcome Kris Evans. Kris Evans comes to us from the Wu-Sai Mind Body Lab at Stanford University. He is a graduate of Stanford University, certified yoga instructor, and experienced sports coach. He is here to discuss the standard, peak, performance study, and complimentary bar support program for California bar exam applicants, and how your graduates can participate in this experience at no charge while preparing for the February 2026 bar exam. Welcome, Kris.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Are my slides up?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. And big shout out. Thank you, Natalie, and everyone else. Appreciate the opportunity to just come share a little bit about this program and appreciate your curiosity and support. My name is Kris Evans, and let me make sure I can actually continue. Perfect. I'm here to represent really a high level team of MVPs at Stanford, experts in clinical health and performance psychology. And really, what I'm going to do is share a little bit about a brief overview of the research as quick as I can. We'll cover some of the main challenges, potential solutions, and the associated impact. So, unsurprisingly to many of you, one of the biggest challenges is that a majority of law school graduates cite stress as a major factor, impediment, and challenge in their academic and professional experience. In fact, stress ramps up immediately after starting law school and continues well into your professional years. And this stress includes and exacerbates high levels of anxiety, worry, loneliness, depression, and increased unhealthy behaviors, things like substance abuse, unhealthy eating, lack of exercise, lack of adequate sleep. Basically, one view is that law school is the beginning of a negative cycle of degraded mental, emotional, and physical health and well-being. And what we know so far in the performance literature is that stress and anxiety predicts poor performance across many areas. And this also includes the bar exam. So, struggles with anxiety and stress can debilitate focus, your memory, they degrade self regulation and learning, and they really just stop people from performing to their full potential, which is what I'm curious about and what I study. And this is impactful because, for example, first generation students, people who are primary caregivers, people who are from poor or underrepresented backgrounds, they disproportionately face higher levels of stress. And so it makes this also less likely for them to pass the bar exam. And this is true for everyone, especially in California, because the bar exam is undoubtedly stressful. Like, it's really difficult. It's not something you can avoid. And of course, stress itself is part of all aspects of life. So it's inescapable, but it's not always detrimental. And in fact, it can be enhancing. And this project is about testing whether we can empower people to harness the stress and the purpose that's nested in their challenging experiences and circumstances, really so they can perform at their best when it matters most. You can't just hide from that test. You got to go do the thing. And so one of the ways in which we do that is really by empowering people to recognize and use their minds, and particularly their mindsets. And so a mindset is a lens or a mental framework, and it really influences how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And there's two well-studied lines of mindset research. This work's established by my mentors and collaborators on this research and this work, Dr. Carol Dweck and Aaliyah Crum. And generally, experimental evidence supports the notion that these mindsets play an important role in shaping our health, well-being, and performance across domains. So in education, believing that intelligence is malleable or having a growth mindset, it predicts greater academic motivation, learning mastery and enjoyment, persistence, and academic performance. And on the other side, we see that believing that stress is enhancing is associated with improved health, vitality, physiological responses, and performance in areas such as education and even really stressful work environments like military, police work, tech, and financial organizational settings. But most importantly, stress mindset has also been linked with greater bar exam performance. Thank you to the California Bar and your wonderful, rigorous research programs, because that serves as an opportunity for me to continue to build on what we already know. And so what we're curious to learn more about is, well, what about the role of well-being and how does this contribute to performance? And also whether or not we could enhance people's belief and ability to regulate their mindsets. And so to do this, we randomize, I'll tell you a little bit about some of the methods and what's going on with the study. We randomize people to one of three groups: a control group, where they just respond to surveys during basically the 10-week bar exam prep period, which is roughly the average amount of time that people take to prepare. A stress mindset training group, really to see if we can reproduce the stress mindset performance from the past and the benefits, while also seeing how well-being plays out over that course of time. And we also have a variety of measures to capture well-being. These are things like, when I say that, things like positive and negative emotions, levels of anxiety, resilience, self-rated physical, mental, emotional health, a wide variety of questionnaires, validated questionnaires. And so the third group, though, is our mindset plus mind-body training condition. And this is really where we're building on the past research. And this includes stress mindset intervention plus yoga-based training. And we test whether we can use yoga-based practices to amplify well-being and people's ability to recognize and regulate their mindsets. And so we expect a beneficial effect for both interventions, the stress mindset conditions, but a synergistic effect produced from the mindset plus yoga training group. And I'll share a little video that highlights a little bit of that. But part of the reason why is because, hold on, did it move over? Oh, there we go. Part of the reason why we choose yoga is because the benefits that yoga-based practices offer, they span the entire mind body, and they work across the developmental spectrum, meaning from little young people to old people. Turns out yoga is just generally considered safe and healthy for people, with improvements across mental, emotional, physical, social, and behavioral areas. But we're using it specifically due to the cognitive processes that it is associated with enhancing at a physiological level and also a psychological level. These are things like focus, attention regulation, memory, learning, and specifically we're interested in how it improves people's awareness, which is mindfulness and meta awareness. And so the next video will highlight that, if it's okay to share that one with you. I think I'm still okay on the timing. Got about a minute or two.
Welcome to the first class of the Mindset Yoga Training, or MyT. I'm Kris Evans, your guide through this series, where we will explore how yoga-based practices like mindful breathing, movement, and meditation can help us build foundational skills to notice and regulate our mindsets in our journey for greater health, well-being, and performance. Now, while I'm a yogi, I'm also a health psychologist specializing in mindsets across several areas like exercise and stress. And our mindsets, or our core beliefs about ourselves and the world and our experiences, such as stress, they impact our lives for better or for worse because they create self-fulfilling outcomes. They influence how we think, how we act, and how we feel. This influence of our mindsets happens whether we're aware of it or not. You see, one essential way mindsets influence our reality is through our attention. What we pay attention to, how we pay attention to it, and how we interpret what we're attending to. Now, what this also means is that our attention can serve as a method to deliberately notice, use, and shift our mindsets. That means we must start by paying attention to how we pay attention. And to do this, we start by watching the mind. From the yogic perspective, we become the observer. We learn to watch and identify with a deeper version of ourselves that isn't at the whims of the mind. And this is the main goal and method of yoga. And so you might think, what? But I thought yoga was about moving and stretching. Yeah, that's true. But it's moving and stretching with a purpose to facilitate awareness, present moment awareness of the mind and body in motion. So the main goal of yoga is to be more mindful of how you think, act, and feel, and literally move through the world.
Okay, so you get a little bit of insight as to exactly why we use yoga as an experiential method to enhance not only the belief to change our mindsets, but metacognitively, the actual skill and the ability. And I'll bring this to a close. Basically, I just wanted to give you a brief outline of what this looks like as a participant. Essentially, over 10 weeks, you complete survey questionnaires, you do that stress mindset training, or the mindset yoga teacher training, which culminates in your bar exam. And hopefully folks are feeling their best after this training, because what we expect is right before that bar exam, and you might have experienced it, is often folks have low levels of well-being right before their test. And so we're trying to see if we can impact that. And so why that is so important is because this research matters. It's impactful, it's applied, which means it's challenging, but it's extremely meaningful. And so far, people have been so gracious because they recognize just how much their minds, their emotional, mental experiences really contribute to their well-being and how they show up and how they perform. And so this research is an opportunity to empower people to show up as their best selves, while in the process conducting innovative and rigorous research that supports well-being and growth of professionals who have a huge part to play in our society. So thank you again for your interest and support, and I'll turn it over to for any questions or any thoughts.
And I'd like to start the discussion by pointing out that we have some bar support professionals here in our member group. And I wonder to what extent you either talk about these types of programs or receive questions about types of programs or barriers that you might see to participation so that we can share them with Kris. Mary.
Hi there. Thank you so much for the presentation, Kris. That was really interesting. I have two questions, but first I can answer your question, Natalie. I have at various times introduced similar type of programming, maybe not as extensive as this, but definitely mindset-oriented exercises to like calm your nervous system, things like that. And I have found that for some people, they love it. But I would say that's not the majority. That has been my experience. That I think that, and this goes to two of my questions, but one of my questions, I think that the people who are studying for the bar, particularly the people who are pinched for time, are the ones who are going to feel the most stressed about adding something else to their plate that's a to-do. So I guess that's the challenge, right? And so, of course, once you get your research and you can show results, yes, but in the meantime, I get a lot of pushback from people wanting, if I want them to do anything else besides study. But the two questions I had is, how much time does it take? This goes to that basically in your three groups. I'm assuming it's a different amount of time that they would be spending on your programming.
And Mary, you hit. I think it's a challenge not only with this specific group and this specific context of time being such an important factor. I mean, folks are trying to really prepare so much to show up as their best self, and that matters. And so, but you often see that time deal that shows up a lot for folks when you start thinking about physical training, for example, doing behaviors that impact your health and well-being. And that's the fine balance. It's like this balance between sometimes you do stuff too that can change your health and well-being. And so what we try to do and what we we have a short intervention that is only about an hour. A stress mindset intervention is only about an hour. And that's basically so the strategies and stories bar research so far is actually based on like our mindset work out of our lab. And so what we saw from that work is like stress mindsets matter. And so that's why we have the shorter version to hopefully, not only show that, hey, this enhancing this mindset's meaningful, but hey, this is a short term, 1 hour. Set aside this 1 hour for this 10 weeks, great. But what we're really trying to test and show is that when you engage in it's about 45 minutes, they'll say 60 minutes, 4 times over that 10 weeks. So a total of about 6 hours of participation over 10 weeks, which absolutely, when you're in the thick of things, you're like, why should I pay attention to anything else? But like over 10 weeks is actually not that much, even for the longest participation. And the shortest participation means all they do is do the surveys, and they get paid $100 too, by the way. Everyone gets paid $100 to do this stuff, which I know is not a ton, but it's at least trying to acknowledge, like, thank you for spending some time to do this. And unfortunately, we're broke as academics, so I can't pay you more, but we're trying to learn about like what happens when we do get the folks that are actually able to put aside some of this time. And also just to wrap this up, Mary, the preliminary analyses is actually pretty potent, and I'm not supposed to share a little bit yet, but these practices and the interventions are very helpful for well-being. That's what we know and what we're seeing. That's what I can say.
I can sell anybody on an hour, and I could probably sell them on 6 hours if you could give me a little more than very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but part of,
I got
at
you.
least sharing, I can't wait to share the empirical data of that we're collecting. I really can't, because not only one, just as a scientist, that's the goal, but two, it's really promising. It's quite promising to see and show. Let me see if maybe I can find if I know we have another question, but there was actually a qualitative quote that I think really captures what is a common theme across participating in this training. And so I'll share it with you. We do quantitative and qualitative analysis. So, but by qualitative, I can share this piece of data because it represents a lot of the quantitative. So here's what it says. Thank you so much for designing this program and making it available to bar prep students. I found the mindset training and the accompanying yoga classes transformational for my mindset and approach to stress at the bar. The combination of empowering poses and mindfulness techniques in the classes really changed my mindset about my abilities and capacity to use stress, which I was actually able to carry with me while I prepared. Law students and lawyers, including me, are often perfectionists. So the length and difficulty of the classes really forced and trained me to remember that my effort is what matters, and making the perfect pose or being the best is out of my control. I was already a lawyer and had taken the bar in a different state a few years ago. And I felt like I was a whole new person while preparing this time around because of the training. Thanks again. And so I share that because these are someone who's already gone through it, and she thought it was quite impactful. And turns out even the folks who are doing it the first time, they think it's quite impactful. And so I can't wait to share out more of the data.
Okay, and so my other question before Devin is, and then I also have one little comment fast. Are you making it available to everybody, or are you trying to limit to like first-time takers? And I'm wondering, is it you're making it available to anybody? Is that what I'm getting?
Yep, everyone. We hope everyone.
But you're
whoever.
tracking that, right? Because I'm wondering if the impact would be more or less depending on your population. So I would be really
For
curious.
sure. We have demographic factors that we'll look at, like moderators, in which you're talking about, and several factors play a role. So, for example, we know folks who have to work full time, they're less likely to pass, and it's no surprise. You got kids, especially, like, turns out they take a lot of attention and energy, and it's tough. But these folks really matter, as well as type of schools, even the amount of time. And by the way, after about 10 hours a day, you don't get much returns 9 to 10 hours. So we're controlling for a lot of demographic information as well as behavioral information and even strategy. So I stayed at a high level, like this research is really focused on, but we even collect like methods and approach and how much people are studying. So back to what you're saying, I get and also look at even when I control for all that stuff, are we seeing improvements in well-being in some of the cycle as a result of the psychological factors? So I do basically mediation analysis, which is a statistical technique to show us how and why an intervention is working, not just like, oh, it's working. And so really we tease apart what is going on and then who does it work best for. So my goal is to it be effective for everybody. I want everyone to be their best self and to show up. And then, but it turns out some folks are more challenged and some folks are less. So great. So we invite everybody.
So and
All
the
right.
last thing I'm going to say, and I'll shut up, is that I'm assuming the results turn out the way it sounds like they're going to turn out. I just want to put an idea out there that having this type of an intervention at the beginning of the first year would be amazing.
You
So
are 100% correct.
yeah.
I mean, the data already shows that upon matriculation, often students get a fixed mindset about their abilities, their skills, their intelligence. I think this is a result. We could spend forever about this, but the kind of culture at law schools are often they stimulate that, and the professors around you, and no knock on folks at all. Sometimes it's happening without their intention or their awareness either. And so we do see that. And so you're right. But for me, we also I'm in the mind body lab, and so we don't discount how you gotta challenge and perform yourself too. Like you guys have a stressful job and role, and so we leaned into the performance phase, and like if we can instill and show, hey, it even works here. I know upstream, you're 100% right. In fact, that's often a time in which we do freshmen coming in or graduate students coming. That's often a time when you see these programs usually go in. So sorry about the time, and thank you for your intriguing questions, Mary.
Thank you so
Devin,
much.
you were standing there very patiently.
No problem at all. Mary speaks for us all in almost every
Oh,
situation.
perfect.
And a lot of things I was thinking about were there. I mean, the thing that I like that she brought up the sort of first year issue at the end, because that's the thing that I'm thinking about is a lot of my bar students, the ones who are more likely to actually maintain a wellness habit during the bar are the folks who've been really diligent about it throughout school, and trying
You
to
said
sort of
it.
change their mind in the last year or during the bar summer is almost never effective. And
Yeah.
so, I imagine you all have like a super long research agenda, but thinking about how we can sort of backwalk this to brand new students, how do we acculturate them throughout the entirety of school?
I agree.
And
I
I
agree
imagine you've
100%.
already gotten some sense of it. Like lawyers and law professors are super skeptical of everything, and so the more
Straight.
data you can put out there, the better, because it will
Exactly.
help me convince my colleagues and my students, like, oh, this is not just some woo-woo guy. These are some folks who are really serious scholars who are actually
Absolutely.
showing why this is valuable. Because
Absolutely.
that's often
Absolutely.
this kind of advice coming from us can get relegated to like, oh, that's what the counseling people want me to do, but there's not actually any sort of evidence to support its efficacy. And we see it
Yeah.
all the time from our students who do engage in these practices, that it benefits them separate from their bar success, just like their
Right.
participants. But the
Right.
more data that you can put out there that we can share, and particularly, I hope that you're planning on going on a roadshow, because there's a lot of faculty
Well,
who,
invite me, please.
yeah, when the data's out, I know some of my colleagues would love to, like, they are like instinctively they get what you're doing, but it would
Yeah.
give them so much more firepower if they're like, oh, and here's the stuff that can support why this stuff makes sense. So I'm
Please,
really
you see my email.
for what you're
You
doing.
see my email. I hope all of you reach out because we're about to gear up for the next iteration for February. So right now there's about 500 or so people interested. I hope that if you share it with your networks, we get even more. But I say that is because I'll analyze that data February, March, April. Reach out to me and I'll come share to anyone and everyone about the efficacy of this training and this work. At a high level, we know, I mean, the research in this space is growing, but like it's pretty transformational actually across the mind body, how these types of practices, and I can talk about how and why across, specific mechanisms, but they're helpful. And of course, how you practice it, who offers it, and the context, like these things all matter. That's why this package is specifically for law school students taking the bar exam in a very stressful time, in a moment. My funders are the Human Performance Alliance, WooSide. They're really interested in human performance. Like literally, that's what they fund, for human performance in stressful situations. And so I'm like, hey, this is human performance. Let's look at it. Let's peel it under. Let's actually dig into and empower folks. And so it's both scientifically intriguing, but in that everyone's applied life, folks are just kind of what you were just talking about. Once they practice these things and they see, like, people are like, wow, that actually was impactful. How did I not know that? When you say being mindful, this is so abstract, but now that I realize that half the time my mind is not even present, I'm not even here with you. If you're not even present, how are you learning material? For example, the content is not even sinking, and you're unaware of it too. So even at just like a base level, as you spend a lot of time focused and taking in information and analyzing. And so when your mind is not even there, it's just already not even functioning. So we're just helping folks bring their mind there. And turns out it's a practice. It's like a muscle. And so we're just bringing that to the muscle. Kris, you had a question?
Yeah, Kris, I appreciate this, and hopefully a quick one. I was just curious about who you find your participants to be, if there's any common traits, like they've done yoga before, or they're kind of more inclined to mindfulness
Yeah,
versus
yeah.
newbies. Yeah.
Great question. Most folks are noobs, as you would say. One is just the truth about, I would say, yoga-based practices. It's funny. I mean, we know exercise. In fact, there's like a pill now. GLP-1 is kind of like that. Like, if you could just capture the benefits of exercise in a pill, people would be paying a ton of money for it. That's why, in some fashion, they're paying for those. But we already know exercise on all many different forms. Now, certain types of exercise affects the mind body in different ways, and so most folks would that are new to this, especially when they come, at least in the type of way in which I teach and coach, they're actually pretty receptive and open to it, even though that they're beginners, because I hopefully try to speak in a very open, inviting way, and the movements and the practices that we do are accessible to everyone. And I always just challenge folks more to, like, don't just take my word for it. If you try and if you pay attention to your own mind and your own experience, these things, you will notice these things. And so I'm a scientist too, and that's a more of a scientific way of thinking. Like, okay, what do you got to say? Let me explore in my own life. Like, oh wow, huh, something's onto that. And then you continue on, you continue deeper. And so, to answer your question more explicitly, we get a lot of beginners, which is not surprising based on the kind of population, but they've actually been quite, once they start the training, folks are like, wow, I didn't think I was going to be so into it, but I love it. Like, it's been so helpful. And the stress mindset training also by itself is very impactful and helpful, which I've been quite happy to see that as well. In fact, the people in the control group are often sending me messages that they're mad that they don't get the training, which I understand too, and I'm a little sad. But from a rigorous standpoint, or scientific standpoint, this is actually the highest level, meaning this is a randomized control trial. And so, Devin, when you're talking about the data, this is the most impactful type of study design for real world impact. And so, we're at that level, and we're actually seeing quite impactful things. And so we can talk more about even more why this is important, but this is the type of work that hopefully you continue to share, for you say, hey, let's maybe start this as first year law students, and starting these things, whether we're looking at it, how it applies to law cognitively, or could be well-being, as you said, Devin. Turns out some of these things spill over, especially awareness-based practices, because your attention and awareness is part of your human experience. It's everything. And so as you learn how to notice it and pay attention, you notice how you use it in infinite areas. So, Negan or Nagin?
Again, yes. Hi, Kris.
Nagin.
Thank you for the
Hi.
brilliant work. I can share my personal anecdotes. Mary, I embed these neuroscientific techniques and mindfulness practices in all areas of my practice, whether it's academic support, whether it's bar study, any class, to build that familiarity. And it pays a great dividends. I have notes that come from students who feel that it has changed their outlook, not only within the law school setting, but just to be able to cope outside of the law school setting. I've had people say that they just feel like they're better human beings after that. When I say that, those are quotes literally from them, from separate students. that would not know each other. And in terms of passage rates, I've seen it actually increase percentage points. So I'm happy to share that with others on this board. Kris, my question to you is, do you have or do you plan with your team to have anything with respect to teacher trainings so that we can have more of this across?
That's interesting. And thank you for sharing your insight. I'm certainly curious to hear more about how you've been
Yeah.
integrating this in your practice on life. So I'd love to connect outside of this. The more and more that I've been in this space, by the way, I'm hearing more, not only energy and support for this stuff, but also the stories like you're uncovering of like, hey, this is I mean, I thought I was just doing it or just me in this small cohort, but hey, this has been really impactful for me. And so we're trying to scale it up in that sense to get it going. And I think what you just said also matters. So we're also thinking about when you say teacher, do you mean like as a faculty member that would want to share these things?
Correct. Do you
Okay.
plan on working with faculty members and educators so that they can better foster environments that would help in supplement these sorts of programs and interventions?
Yeah, well, there's two answers. Actually, many years ago, I helped build a company called Breathe for Change, so you should look into that. Breatheforchange.com. That was the entire purpose of the organization to train educators, and this is educators across, the little ones to the old folks, and so that's a great organization that does that now. The high level insights that come from are is absolutely for that. But also to answer your question, I've been thinking one of our collaborators, Kris Brem, she's the leader of what's called Yoga X, which is at Stanford, is a clinical also where you could do training to do what you're just talking about. Yoga X, where they're really focused on integrating yoga in clinical contexts, medical and psychiatric contexts. It's a very potent and powerful tool. And we are thinking about, okay, maybe we create in the yoga spaces, it could be like a 50-hour course for someone who's like, yeah, like I actually feel really comfortable teaching these practices in my school of Miami University is an example of some of the folks at faculty level that do this a little bit more. But essentially what you're saying. So we've been talking about that. How do we potentially offer where folks can share these types of practices in an aligned way with their students? But I also must say these things are thousands of years old and there's a lot of high quality information and practices, but like when it comes down to it, it's about the practice. And don't get me wrong, the people around you are important to help share insights, but we are like, there's so much available. We just want to find ways to get more folks to practice, and even more important, more information about the impact of that practice. But there's many meta-analyses, and a meta-analysis is something that aggregates experimental research together. And these meta-analyses are really showing us that these practices across the mind-body spectrum are really impactful. So we want to get more, whether it's teachers or students or kids or older folks, everyone join us because it's important.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Natalie. Is she talking or does she just, yeah, I don't hear you.
I'm on
Oh, there
mute.
we go.
Oh, here we go. So if people are interested in what they heard and they want to put the call out again to their graduates who are thinking about becoming applicants to the bar exam and have applied, I know that we're getting ready to send out the invitations for the program to start because it is that 9-week ramp up to the bar. Is there still time to sign up for this cohort? And if so, how much time?
Yep. Thank you for asking that. We are sending the first invite and the final kind of set of invites to join the study on Monday. And so right now we're recruiting. And so folks are interested, they join us, but the folks who really join the study are the ones who, consent to join and create their accounts and do all this stuff, which is a little bit different than just interest. And so we're going to send that out on Monday. So if you guys are interested, please, all the support. The more the merrier. This is what we got money for, to pay people to do this. We're trying to learn if it's effective. So the more, the better. And we'll learn in that case. But we do have several hundred people that are interested. And so we want to, if we got 1,000 people, that'd be just like amazing. So send it out. let me know if I could support it. And then we'll be hopefully doing this again for next summer too. So there will be another opportunity. But at that point, we might actually integrate some physiological measurements at that point. So we study the mind body across so many different levels. And because of the efficacy so far, we see that's effective. We think there are probably some physiological changes that are occurring.
And so the experience would look something like an applicant who's already signed up for the bar exam is going to get this invitation on Monday, and then they can take the step to set up their account and review and sign the consent. Are you going to allow direct signups on your Peak website this
Yeah, if
time
they
as
go to the
well?
Peak website, that's how they actually check if they're eligible. And from that eligible, so you can send them to the website or they receive a message from the California bar folks, or it could be an email. If you are curious, you can send me a message. I'll just send you a little like a little snippet that you can just forward so you don't even have to worry about writing anything. And so they go there and then they sign up they do an eligibility questionnaire, very short, like 30 seconds. And then the folks who are eligible, that's who I will invite on Monday to join. And then they'll have roughly 2 more weeks, I should say, to join by then. Meaning the training for these folks have to start basically in the new year because of the February bar, and so we are stringent. After a certain timeline, we won't let folks in, but you can kind of sprinkle in over the next 2 weeks if they join, if they fill out the eligibility, and everyone's eligible as long as they're taking the bar. But of course, there's spam and stuff like that, or people don't notice what it's for. They're like, I don't know. They're just people that just wanted people that are interested in doing the study too, or not even doing any of this stuff. So
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks. It helps to know what the applicant experience will be like as well. Uh-huh.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Teresa, did you have a question?
Oh, no, I'm all set. Thank you. Thank you for
Okay,
presenting.
perfect. Well, I really do appreciate your time and attention, everyone, and the work that you do. If you have any additional thoughts or questions, please reach out. I'd love to chat with you. I certainly would love to share this research because, as you're talking about, the more the better. And hopefully, a year or two or a few years from now, you guys are like, oh man, there's this freshman course. I remember talking about this, like, this stuff that they were doing at Stanford. Like, turns out it's impactful. So, uh, any support is greatly appreciated. So I hope you guys do. I wish you well for the weekend and the holidays. And thanks again, Nally, for this opportunity. And I'm available to anyone and everyone.
Appreciate you joining us. And in fact, we're about to move into a program just talking about some of the different programs, including Peak, and how schools might incorporate that in their communication to students from year one.
Oh,
So
perfect. Love it. Love it.
we are perfectly aligned.
Love it. Love it. Oh, yeah. And this
Mhm.
training works in conjunction with the other programs. Like explicitly, it's like can work in conjunction with them. So we support that one and all the ones too, and all the research. So thanks again. And I look forward to maybe seeing y'all again.
Well, thank you for joining us. So I'll turn it from one Kris back to the other. Chair Idedan.
All right. Thank you to Kris. And now, Natalie, I believe we are on to item 2.4, some information about key deadlines and the exam mindset programs that you mentioned.
Yes, one of which is Peak. So I'll just bring up a few slides. So we were talking about the strategy and concept of one of the particular programs, but we're going to talk about some of the logistics that your applicants are seeing. And I think that one of Chair Idedan's wish list coming out of this is a calendar of when all of the different dates and reminders and things are coming. And now that we've heard from Stanford, maybe that's something that we can look to create for you. So we'll bring up some slides and talk a little bit about it. And I think I'm just seeing the center section. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so let's go past this slide. So the mindset programs really are three. The Bar Strategies program, previously called Bar Strategies and Stories, Peak Performance program, which we just heard a little bit about, and the Reset Retaker Support Program, which of course Mary is involved in along with several other faculty. That this is the one program that is specifically limited to those who are retaking the bar exam. And all of these are offered at no charge to applicants. They are not at no charge. Both academics and the state bar are investing in these programs for your graduates. So the main thing that I'd like to seek your help and collaboration on, or ideas about how to collaborate, is getting the word out to your students, probably when they are still students, so that this is something that they think about and they understand the value and see if it's right for them. So and then once they actually get to the bar study program, where do all these programs fit? Let's imagine they wanted to take all three. Let's assume they are a retaker. So right when they're beginning their bar exam study, they would take the bar strategies program. That takes less than 2 hours to complete. We've seen that some schools actually work this into their bar support program. And so they have a day where the class session is actually just doing the bar strategies program. And we'd love to hear how that's going if we are lucky enough to have any schools that are doing that right now. And so it's helpful at any time, but it is most helpful if it can be right at the beginning. And then throughout the study period, you've got two things going on. You've got these relatively on-demand programs that are part of Peak over the 10-week period up to 6 weeks. And then also the Reset Retaker Support Group, which we've been trying, the LAP Lawyer Assistance Program sponsors this, and they've been experimenting with different times. And right now, they've settled on the early evening dinner period. That's when these are happening. So they really can fit into different parts of the day, and someone can take advantage of all of them, and all of them at no charge. Next slide. Yeah, and we can go on to the next. So because we do partner with different academic groups to do these, and because they do want to have those rigorous controlled trials, there are different ways to sign up for them. So it does take a few extra steps to think about how to do so. We'd love to have a single page where someone can go click, I'll sign up for all three, but it would be hard to do that and give up the results. So for bar strategies, that's one on-demand session, and here's how it's delivered to your applicants. It's sent out in 2 waves. For those that signed up for the bar exam by November and registered for the program, they received the program on December 3rd. And they're able to take it hopefully as soon as possible, but anytime they like. If they've signed up by January 9th, they'll get the program on the 21st, and they can hopefully do it that day. And if not, they can do it as soon as they are able. We are sending out reminders regarding bar strategies via email on December 16, 22, and January 8th. One thing that's unique about this study is that each person gets their own individualized invitation with their own individualized link. So for some of the others, you can send out a link or you can post a link on something like Populi or your learning management system. For this one, you do need to refer them back to their unique email. And those are the days when the emails will come. Any thoughts about encouraging students to check their email at a salient time? I'm seeing a couple smiles. Mary,
No, but I have a question.
sure.
When it says they can sign up in November, I'm presuming it's a box check when they sign up for the bar exam. Is it like one of
Yeah.
the pages? Is that how it works?
For this one only, yes, there's a box check, or they can also sign up for it through one of the customized emails.
Okay, so what I would recommend, and I thought that's what it was, because one of the things that I've done with our students is when we do our razzle dazzle with them, like, oh, here, you want to sign up for the bar, and this is what you're going to do. We show them a screenshot of what to click, like, sign up for this, and this is what it is. So
Mhm.
providing something like that to the schools, I think would be very helpful because I find that, being really explicit, there's so much information coming at them. Yeah, I think we've had better success with getting folks to sign up for it, being able to show them that because it is an individual link and things like that.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. Okay, and
Oh, can
Carly?
I say,
Yeah,
I'm so
sure.
sorry. Carly, sorry to interrupt. I have one more thing to say. I'm so full of it. Lindsay Harrington is also one of the reset instructors who's now on our
That's
council. So I
right.
just wanted to make sure y'all knew that.
Okay, and Carly?
Yeah, I agree with Mary. If we could, like, if you could send out just a short description of each kind of what was on the last screen, and we can kind of put that out to our students, that would be really helpful. And then I guess just a clarifying question: if a student is a retaker, obviously we'll recommend the reset series, but if they've already done bar strategies, are they eligible again?
Hmm. I'm actually not sure about that. Cody, do you know? Can they take the bar strategies more than one time?
I don't know. I haven't heard that limitation, which makes me want to say that they can participate again, but I think we should take that back and then we can let the members know. I think I'll want to confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good
Yeah.
question. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. And then let's go on to the next slide, peak program, and reset program. So reset this time, at one point it was a lunchtime series. Now it's a dinner series. And right now it's 5 sessions. The sessions are usually 90 minutes. I think the first one might actually be 60 minutes, but the other ones are 90 minutes. And yes, we do have two of our presenters here, both Mary and Lindsay. Each one is focused around a different topic. And some of these topics were actually shaped by feedback from the Law School Council based on how they looked before versus now. And Lindsay and Mary, would you like to say a little bit about your experience teaching in the program and what the students have had to say?
Yeah, go. I mean, if you want to go ahead, Mary, but my experience is we've shaped it a little based on feedback that we received working with Ken Norse. And so I think right now we have a pretty solid program in terms of hitting on all of those areas so that retakers can, pick and choose based on their outcome of a previous exam. So I am doing the essay section. I really enjoyed participating in the program.
Thanks, Lindsay. And how about you, Mary?
I think it's a really great program. I don't know, like, I don't have any data on, if it's had impact and things like that. I would think it would, but I think, it's high quality instruction on like basic skills and things like that. I will say I have gotten emails and stuff from folks saying how helpful they found it and things like that. But they're still doing it, so I guess they must have some good data. But I imagine Ken must be crunching some numbers behind the scenes, so it'd be interesting to see his results.
And I don't know that they've put out impact results yet. This is still a relatively new program. But I know another thing that they've done, again, based on your feedback here, is you might notice the first session is December 8th. So that has happened already. But they now do record the sessions. And so if you have applicants that haven't signed up, but now find out or hear good feedback about the first session and want to sign up, they can do so. And after signing up, they'll also get access to the prior sessions as well. So we don't want someone to be barred from participating just because they hadn't attended that first session. They can sign up along the way. And I know that that was a request from the beginning, and now through this iteration, we're able to do it. Okay, let's go to our next slide.
Did I miss one maybe?
I don't know. I feel like our peak slide maybe, but we can talk through that because we just saw Kris. So there are two ways to sign up for the peak program. The first one would be the email that that he's sending out on Monday, but also on our California bar exam page down toward the bottom, the link to sign up is there too. So that's a general link. And if you'd like to put that out on your learning management system or the other ways that you communicate with students, then that's available to you. So those are the three different possibilities. They are all in play. They are all invested in by the State Bar and by the academic researchers putting them together for the benefit of your applicants. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Natalie. And I think we're on item 2.5.
Yes. Okay, so this is just a brief reminder. So though this is item 2.5, we're going to talk about rule 2.84 of the MCLE rules. So just a reminder as you begin the spring, for those of you that have moot court or a mock trial, that not everybody knows that within the last several years, the State Bar has joined in what some other states have already allowed to offer up to 2 hours for mock trial or a moot court coaching and judging under specified circumstances in the rules. So if it helps you to get attorneys in the community to come and be a part of those programs, knowing that they can receive those MCLE credits. If we go to the next slide, you can see a little bit more of what the specific things are that are allowable. I know that I myself usually judge a particular competition that usually has a regional area here in San Francisco every year. And for many years, I saw the MCLE paperwork go around, but I never received one because it was not a possibility in California. But now I'm happy to say that when I do that, I was just as committed before as now. But I'm also happy that we're able to award MCLE credit here in California. And I just wonder, are any schools promoting this through your mock trial or through your moot court program? Or is it new information?
New to me.
Okay, well, yeah, so there's a general summary up on our website, but then the particular rule, if they want to know exactly what can be included, is here, State Bar Rule 2.84. And so for all of you who are California licensed attorneys, you probably are getting teaching credit, but this might be available to you too. So that's all I've got here. And if there are no questions, we can move on to 2.6, and I'll turn it over to Cody.
Yeah, thanks, Allie. I wanted to just give an update to our members because there are a number of kind of new subcommittee meetings happening at the Committee of Bar Examiners, and there's one that's particularly important. So following the February 2025 examination, the Committee of Bar Examiners decided to create two new subcommittees. One is the Examination Administration Subcommittee, and the other is the Examination Development Subcommittee, with the purpose being that those subcommittees would help explore and kind of discuss some of the major choices related to bar exam development and administration at a kind of a more granular level than is appropriate at the full committee meetings. At the first of the exam administration subcommittee was held in November 2025, and at that meeting, what that subcommittee did was draft a rubric for assessing possible vendors to deliver state bar exams and business requirements that are required of those vendors. At the November meeting, what that subcommittee explored was the requirements for vendors for the first year law students examination. And then at the January meeting, that subcommittee is going to do the same, again, develop kind of an assessment rubric and business requirements for any vendors to be used for the California bar examination in the short term. What's going to happen next is that the State Bar is going to release a request for proposals from vendors to deliver the first year law students exam and the California bar examination. I guess I should take one step back and point out that what is being discussed are the vendors that are delivering the exams in the short term. We're talking about, when I'm talking about a bar exam vendor, I'm really talking about the role that ExamSoft currently plays in delivering computer-based exams at a large test center in person. This is sort of separate from our later discussion, which is going to be about the future of the exam. This is about just kind of procurement efforts for our current examinations. So in January of next year, there will be a request for proposals from vendors who are interested in serving the state bar to deliver the first year law students exam. And then in spring, I believe we're aiming for March of 2026, we'll receive similar requests for proposals from the vendors that are interested in serving the state bar to deliver the California bar examination. Right now, we use Prometric for the first year law students exam, and we use ExamSoft for the bar examination. Those companies are also certainly allowed to submit proposals, so this process shouldn't kind of be seen as necessitating any changes. It is just part of the committee's oversight and kind of desire to do its due diligence to explore all of the options that are available. Any questions on that before I move to the second the item 2.7? Okay. 2.7 is really just a report about the recent board in California, Committee of Bar Examiner meetings related to the future of the bar exam. I'll keep this update relatively brief because we're going to talk about this in more detail when we get to the business portion of the agenda. But I think the big updates to share is that in November, when the Board of Trustees met, they continued to have its ongoing discussions about what the future of the California bar examination could look like. At the December Committee of Bar Examiners meeting, which was last Friday, the committee heard from a number of experts. So the Nevada State Bar representatives came to present on their comprehensive licensing examination, which is made up of multiple choice questions, performance tests, and a supervised practice component. Folks from the National Conference of Bar Examiners came to present on their next gen bar examination. And the state bar had two consultants, which it's retained to help build some reports and kind of decision-making frameworks for our board and committee of bar examiners. Also present on kind of a different framework to think about making these really complex decisions. All of that, I think, informs the content we're going to talk about later in the agenda, so I'm not going to get into that in too much detail. But what I want to lay out as part of just kind of an ongoing effort to give members updates about these discussions is that those are the discussions that happened prior to this meeting. The next major discussion will be on January 23rd. That is when the Board of Trustees and the Committee of Bar Examiners will have its joint meeting. And that is where we have asked two representatives from each law school type to come and participate in a roundtable discussion about these choices as well. And we're a little bit of a broken record here, but it's really important. The timeline for our decision makers to make this decision about the future of the examination really requires that the Board of Trustees approve a path forward at its May 2026 meeting. That is because the state bar has a 2-year reporting notice requirement to the public if it is to change the format of the examination. And we are not able, beginning with the July 2028 examination, to purchase the multi-state bar exam multiple choice questions because it'll be discontinued. So there really is not a do nothing option at this point. The board needs to make a determination by the summer of next year so that we can provide that appropriate notice to the public. So that is kind of really dictating the timeline, and that is why all of our sub-entities, including Law School Council, are having a number of discussions between now and May 2026 to make sure that there's a lot of feedback collected from various stakeholders. And I'm going to get into some of this in more detail later in the agenda.
And Kuda, I might make one comment. You mentioned that at the joint BOT-CBE meeting, there'll be representatives to deans from each type of law school. And all of the deans from all of the schools were invited to have the option to participate, and then each group of schools selected amongst themselves, in case people were wondering how that selection process happened.
Yes, thank you for adding that. Oh, I see Susan with her hand raised. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Cody. My apologies for being late. And thank you, Natalie, for explaining a little more on how the representatives were selected. I wondered if at any point are who those representatives going to be announced? Are we going to know who they are before the meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I shared with the group earlier that it's my understanding that the ABA approved schools, having met amongst themselves, have selected Dean Clark from Loyola Marymount and Dean Churinsky from Berkeley to represent the law schools, the ABA approved law schools. I have not received confirmation from our other law school types, although that I think that's where we're at right now as far as announcements. Of course, that could be subject to change if there's scheduling conflicts or anything like that.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, I guess I'll hand it back over. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Cody. Item 3, committee report. There is no committee report, it appears. So we are now on to item 4, the minutes. So we are going to approve the June 11th, 2025 Law School Council open session minutes. So I'd like to direct the LSC members' attention to those minutes. If there are any questions or corrections, please feel free to review and let us know at this time. Okay, we can move forward now. I'd like to ask for a motion to move to approve the minutes. If somebody would like to make a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Devin. And then a second to the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. And to the staff, Teresa, could you please take a vote?
Susan Bakshian,
Approved.
Mary Basic,
Sorry, approved.
Lindsay Harrington,
Approved.
Devin Kenyon,
Approved.
Nagin Mirigavi,
Approved.
Carly Sassy,
Approved.
Kris Edidon.
Approved.
With 7 yeses and 0 nos, the motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you. We are now on to item 6.1, where we are going to learn about AB 1155 from Natalie.
Okay, I'll bring up some slides to talk about this. And some of you may know about this or may know about the ABA analog. AB 1155 is a new bill that will take effect in August 2026 here in California, which requires that the option to be compensated be available for externships. Whether or not compensation is available will be up to the employer, but it can no longer be prohibited by schools. And so here's a little background of where that came from. And we've been asked as an agency to make sure that all law schools know about this. So let's go to the next slide. So this bill, this is no longer a bill. It's a chaptered statute. It's effective in August. It applies specifically to ABA and Cal schools. Generally, these are the schools with externships. Unaccredited law schools generally are not offering externships. They're allowed to, but it's not something that we often see. Compensation is not required, but schools must allow compensation to be a possibility. And the statute asks that the schools encourage it. The schools are not the source of the compensation. It is up to the employers. The school may still charge tuition, and it is the student that would keep the compensation. So a little background about where this came from comes in the following slides. Let's go forward. to the next slide. So in 2016, the ABA changed one of its interpretations, 305-2. Previously, that standard barred pay at 4 credit intern and externships at ABA approved schools, and that ended in 2016. But fast forward after this happened, let's go to the next slide. In 2024, the ABA's Law School Division published a survey in which they determined that 49% of the ABA-approved law schools still prohibited compensation for externships that also earned academic credit. So they came forward with a proposal to show this information. And let's go on to the next slide. The House of Delegates looked at that information and again encouraged law schools to allow students to have an option to receive not only the 4 credit credit study, but also monetary compensation if an employer was offering that when they were doing internships or externships. Next slide. Around the same time, shortly thereafter, in the state of California, 2 things happened. The first bill that was passed now became a statute related to community colleges that they encouraged compensation at 4 credit internships, and that had the effect just in the community college space of giving access to strong workforce program funds as a result of the passage of this statute. Shortly thereafter, we see, let's go to the last slide, which will circle around to where we began, AB 1155, allowing and encouraging a similar opportunity for law school students. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. It is not yet in effect, but it will be in effect by the time that next year's school year begins. Are there any questions? Okay, I don't think I see any hands. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Natalie. And then we had Chris Evans discuss 6.2 earlier. Now we are on to the next item where Natalie will discuss the Committee of Bar Examiners preliminary work plan items.
Sure. So this is a really important part, and I want to thank everybody. We've been talking about a lot of detailed programs and a lot of detailed thoughts during the day, but this is a very important thing that you will be doing that drives your work for the rest of this year. Each year, the CBE creates a work plan, and then both the Law School Council and CS Bars create their own work plans that roll up into that, determining where you would like to provide feedback based on the CBE priorities. And I'm going to show you the actual CBE work plan that was used and shown in December. The CBE considers it in draft format in December, has time to consider the work plan over the next month, and then it will adopt it formally in January. We're going to show you the work plan in a slightly modified form. Yesterday, the CS Bars met, and we're going to show you the version of the work plan that keeps the CS Bars notes in there, just so you can see what the other schools were talking about. Prior to these meetings, we met with both the chair of CS Bars and also with Kris, your chair of the Law School Council, to pre-identify some areas for discussion. So let's bring up that chart. And for those people who are watching in the public, if you click on this agenda item, you'll be able to see a version of this chart. It doesn't have the school notes, the 2 columns off to the right, but it does have the other columns. So for legibility purposes, you should be able to follow along with us. So this was posted on the CBE agenda, also posted here on CS Bars. And let's slide down to the chart area to the first. So just so you know what this looks like, on the left, there is the work plan item, the deadline for the CBE to consider. So that's the meeting when the item's going to go to the CBE. So presumably you're generally either wanting to discuss it prior, if you want to provide feedback to the CBE, or just after if you want an informational update and be able to ask questions about the action that the CBE took. If it's the type of action that gets forwarded to the Board of Trustees for discussion, that's in the third column. And then we also show how it links to the State Bar strategic plan goals. They're organized by the different areas. Admissions administration is the first one. Most of those are staff internal, not so much a law school council interest. But let's slide down to the first box that has, here we go. This is actually where you will spend probably most of your time this year. We added a third meeting, really more than anything else, to focus on this area, thinking about the steps for executing the future bar exam approach adopted by the CBE, the Board of Trustees, and the Supreme Court. So Cody talked about a little bit about how that's going to happen, and he's going to talk a little bit more about it and the feedback that law schools have already given in a moment. But in speaking to the chairs, part of what they thought about was receiving not only an update, but dividing the three meetings into different topic areas and the types of topic areas. Kris, I don't know if you wanted to talk about them directly, or I'm happy to summarize.
Oh yeah, Natalie, maybe if you can do just a brief summary, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically, starting at a high level and then moving down in granularity as the meetings progress. First of all, today, understanding the timeline and the format of the feedback that will be taken in. Then thinking about what are the course changes that are needed, what is the software learning that needs to happen, and then finally the more granular changes, specifically the logistics for that day. How will they be similar or different in preparation than before, so that this way, when the State Bar is doing its planning, we can be sure that we're considering the factors that are most important to your students and to your graduates to help promote success in licensure. Okay, next. Let's go down to the next format. I suppose I could stop and ask if there is interest in that, but I think I would assume there is consensus interest in talking in each aspect of the bar exam as this goes forward. The next item that was identified is above the blue line here. The State Bar on an ongoing basis is establishing and reviewing item selection criteria for the exams, content rotation protocols, and security measures. Some of these are adopted in closed session, but we received requests from the chairs to the extent that this information is public to provide informational updates to you. I don't have a specific date as to this because this is ongoing, but is there general consensus that this would be a topic for informational update? Devin?
It's not relevant to that one. It's actually sort of two above it. It's the sort of editing and approving topic. I would like for us at some point to get some kind of presentation on how that actually happens, considering both the February experience and the fact that there was a significant typo doctrinally in the July exam. I definitely am getting more and more questions from people about, is there actually a process by which there is editing happening at the bar level? And so it would be nice to hear in a public forum that that actually is happening and what that looks like.
Okay, Teresa, can you mark that item? And then Devin, I can find out what is possible to share in a public forum regarding that? Yes. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, and let's keep going. So let's stop there. Okay, the next item is an exploratory item, just really to consider whether or not this should happen, and it's whether or not to phase out handwriting options for non-TA applicants at the bar exam. And this is really about understanding what options will be available, if any, for remote testing. And the options are different, whether handwriting is needed versus not. And in speaking with your chair, he talked a little bit about letting schools know so that you can look at your own student population and determine why students are using handwriting, whether it's based on information that we can share with them that would help them consider using a technological solution, or if it is really better for them to use the handwriting. Here, in terms of timing, this is a long process. The study is going on over the course of this year with a presentation in December to the Committee of Bar Examiners. If there is any thought that handwriting should be phased out, that is a notice item. And so there would be 2 years of notice. So we are at least 3 years away if this is something that's going to be considered. And I'm not sure if it will be. But is this something you would, first of all, like to be updated on? But second of all, would you like to go back to your schools and we can go back to the larger school community generally, just to see what the handwriting is meaning to each of your students and your graduates? And is this a controversial topic at this point? We see that the most handwriters are generally attorneys or individuals trained outside the US. Susan.
Just a quick follow-up question. Assuming that handwriting was to be phased out, this is only as an option to select to take the exam that way, right? Because handwriting has always been an option when there's technological failure.
Correct.
So that's not subject to change, right?
Well, I actually am not involved in this project, so I'm not sure what's considered here. I think that they're probably looking at a range of options. And Cody, do you know at this point? I think it may be a little bit too early to
It's
say, but all of this is exploratory, so no specific avenue is contemplated at this time.
Yeah, I'm not sure that actually the discussions got to that level of detail, Susan, so I appreciate you raising it. The priority as it's set from the committee was about the population of test takers who select out of preference to handwrite their exam. That's the catalyst for this discussion, but I think you bring up a good point. Uh, there's several tracks of handwriters. Obviously, there's those that need handwriting because of an accommodation. That is, kind of off limits. There's then maybe, as you mentioned, the handwriting option due to technological issue. So I guess this conversation should touch on all three of those points and make clear which options will be available in the future. So we'll take note of that.
Mary.
I just had a question. How many people are handwriting? As you're asking, I can't remember the last time I had a student who voluntarily handwrote. Some have used it as that they had a technological failure, but virtually nobody coming from my school in the last couple places I've been has. So I'm just curious how many do.
I don't
Yeah,
know the specific number, but it's definitely a rapidly declining number. Cody?
yeah, Mary, I don't have the specific number in front of me. I believe it's several hundred per examination. And of that population today, um, I want to say it's about 9 and 10 of those selected out of preference. So, it's in February less than 10%, and in July even an even smaller proportion of the total test taking population, and a very small percentage of those really require it for an accommodations purpose. As Natalie mentioned, some of our handwriters come from outside of the US, and so there may be kind of cultural preferences or other circumstances where they would prefer it. But that's without giving specific numbers, because I don't have them in front of me. I think that gives you kind of a general sense of the scope of the discussion and kind of who's impacted.
Chris?
Yeah, I was just going to give a little background why I just thought it might be interesting to talk about this item was, as has been mentioned, I feel like out-of-state attorneys at times are handwriting some non-traditional students. And we also have this interesting phenomenon at our law school, and I'd love to hear from other people of the trend now towards our faculty sort of saying, maybe I want to limit laptop usage. Maybe I want to require students to only handwrite. Sometimes it's also trying to deal with the growth of AI. And so we are having some 1Ls now that are saying, well, my professors are making me handwrite my notes. I think I might try handwriting my exams. But yeah, I'd love to hear more about what other schools are encountering with this.
Thank you. That's interesting. Sounds like this will be an interesting discussion. Okay, let's proceed, and we will agendize it for a discussion on another day, but let's proceed to our next item. We're actually close to the end at this point. Here we go. Special. Okay, so the special admissions rules are undergoing a review. When they are finalized, to the extent that there are changes that affect law schools, if they do, we'll bring those back to you. And then the next item, the State Bar at the CBE level is developing tracking metrics to analyze the impact of revised testing accommodation rules. They're going to be published up on the website later this month. They largely have to do with changes that have already been implemented about applying for same accommodations when someone has previously had accommodations at law schools or other high stakes exams, as well as clarifying the appeals process. And so once those changes are up, we plan to bring those back just here for discussion. There is usually a lot of interest in making sure that you are fully updated as to options related to testing accommodations. So that's something that we plan to bring back to you. But we plan to bring people who are experts here at the State Bar in testing accommodations, which is a little bit outside of my area. Okay, let's go to next. So now that we're in the educational standards section, the majority of these items, other than the bar exam, were noted by CS bars, but they have to do with accredited and unaccredited law school rules. So the items that were identified by your chair, we actually have already gone through. So our plan from here would be to take those items and place them into a calendar based on your suggestions here and whether they're feedback items or informational items. And Devin, we will get back to you on what we can provide regarding the editing process. I do believe, Teresa, there's one more up here about diversifying the grader pool that we slipped by that I want to make sure that we cover. And I'll just talk through it while we're going up. But we learned that not everyone knew that for many years now, the State Bar does specific outreach to work to spread the word about how to become a grader and also to diversify the grader pool across many different axes. And that's on the work plan again this year. It has been for many years, but not everyone knew. And so the chairs thought it might be helpful for you to know that that initiative is going on. We go to minority bars around the state. We go to general bar associations and other possibilities just to have as much outreach as possible to diversify the greater pool. So that's another FYI item that we suggested. Okay, so those are the items we'll put together for your work plan, and I want to thank everyone for their attention. We'll turn it back to Cody.
Yeah, so let me get my slide deck up here. My item is a discussion regarding the California bar exam beginning in 2028 and beyond. And I'm bringing to you kind of an amalgam of two different presentations. One that was presented to the Committee of Bar Examiners from our consultants who are helping develop reporting and kind of a decision-making framework for the committee, as I mentioned. And the other is a summary of a survey that was submitted to or that was solicited responses from law school deans. And I want to share kind of the results of the survey, recognizing that that survey kind of serves as a snapshot of those particular deans' feedback at that particular time. And I want to kind of offer all this information in a package. Then I'm going to open up the floor for a discussion about the future of the exam. So let me share my screen here. I should also state we have had across all of our sub-entities a number of discussions already. This might be the first discussion at Law School Council to really dig into this topic at this level of detail. All of this, as I kind of mentioned already in today's meeting, is part of our desire to really gather as much feedback as possible, gather feedback throughout the discussion as we kind of recognize that this is a complex topic and it's dynamic and perspectives are shifting and more information is being brought to the table. So what I'm going to share today is kind of what I can share at this moment. We'll continue to update members as different decision makers have meetings or have new information brought to them. And I think this will be an ongoing discussion that evolves over time. Okay, there we go. So I am starting with a portion of the slide deck that was presented by Dr. Louise Berry and Danette McKinley, as I mentioned, consultants to the State Bar. I sort of kind of shortened this slide deck so that we could talk about these topics with enough specificity to have a good discussion, but I recognize kind of our time limitation. So I do want to remind members, if you want to see all of these materials in their full form, you can visit the December 5th Committee of Bar Examiners meeting agenda where this presentation is attached. So when the doctors started their discussion, as I mentioned earlier, they started with a reminder of kind of the challenges or the limitations that are really in front of decision makers at this point. And so I'm going to touch on those again. I know I mentioned them earlier, but the multi-state bar examination will no longer be available for purchase starting July 2028. And so as I said earlier, the implication is there is no do nothing option. A decision about the future of the bar examination needs to be made by July 2026 to allow for what is the second point here, the statutorily required 2-year notice. The doctors also presented at their meeting several options that we're going to dig into in just a minute, but really started the discussion with kind of a frank and honest recognition that there are a number of areas in which there's some level of uncertainty. So as we talk about perhaps maybe the future where the next gen bar exam is adopted, as some law school deans shared their interest in score portability, that is not a certainty for students in the future, particularly those who attend unaccredited and non-ABA law schools, or if the board adopts a California specific exam, and that's for that option, there is kind of limited performance data available. So this part of the discussion really was a reminder that the decision makers are going to have to use all the information available to them, but there may be some areas in which there are not yet answers or won't be answers when there comes time to make this decision. And then lastly, one of the biggest factors that I think is driving the discussion today are the technology issues that rose out of the February 2025 examination. And so the Board of Trustees and the Committee of Bar Examiners previously kind of set in place some priorities and principles for them to explore the future of the bar examination. Innovation is a word that was used. Flexibility is a word that was used. And to whatever extent those are achievable, we also need to just recognize, some of the lessons learned from that February administration. So that sort of set the stage for the discussion, just kind of setting these parameters and different factors in place. What the doctors did in establishing kind of a decision-making framework was kind of first zoom out and laid out really what is 2 options in front of the state bar today. Path 1 can be summarized as kind of state control and innovation. This is the state bar developing its own exams. This prioritizes its autonomy over the content of the exam and the administration of the exam. again, this maybe provides for flexibility when it comes to, perhaps a future with remote testing, certainly flexibility about when or maybe how often the exam can be administered. But that comes with trade-offs. The ability to develop and administer an exam independently requires significant state resources. And it may also mean kind of trading some of these other possible benefits, like perhaps score portability. So this was really about just kind of clarifying in kind of simpler terms, if you distill path one into just these benefits, here are some of the consequences. Path two in that presentation was distilled down to what was described as national alignment and efficiency. So this is perhaps, adopting the next gen bar exam. This prioritizes efficiency and integration with kind of the national approach. It opens the door for some benefits, potentially score portability, and it certainly kind of reduces some of the risks and perhaps requires less resources of the state bar. And then again, the trade-offs, it means a loss of control over the content and the administration. It may mean to some extent a limitation on what state-specific law or California topics can be tested. And so again, this is just about kind of being upfront about the benefits and the consequences. So that's kind of at the highest level, and then we are kind of working our way down or drilling into the options. So if we're talking about path one, that's state control and innovation, we're really talking about a California developed option. And so I want to lay out then kind of the choices that are currently in front of the decision makers. So in that path one, state control and innovation, they are currently considering what is our current exam, 200 multiple choice questions, essays, and performance test questions, serving as a bridge to some bigger reform effort in the future. This could be administered as early as February 2028. And what this would require is that the state bar continue to develop its own multiple choice questions through our agreement with Kaplan, and continue to develop essays and performance tests as well. They're also thinking, the board and committee are also thinking about what's been called kind of a streamlined exam. This is sort of inspired by what the state of Nevada has produced. And so this would be an exam that's shorter in length. It has multiple choice questions, but it has fewer multiple choice questions. It has performance test questions, and it eliminates essays. And sort of the exam design concept there is that between the kind of testing of knowledge through multiple choice questions and the testing of performance test questions or skills through performance tests, you can really capture what the full breadth of what you're trying to assess of each test taker without essays. Essentially, essays create a level of redundancy. And then a third option kind of under that tier is the same approach, a Nevada inspired exam, shorter length, multiple choice and performance tests only, and then with some added skills component. And the reason that's there is because part of Nevada's plan is a supervised practice component, and there's a lot of potential value in having folks, kind of having experiential learning. However, I think there's some significant questions about kind of feasibility in California due to the scale of the state and the number of applicants. And so there's what the board and committee is considering is perhaps those skills that you would gain from supervised practice can be assessed through some other component that's not a traditional bar exam, but is maybe some sort of module that really gets at those. And then on path two, talking about that national alignment, what that's really talking about is adopting an exam that someone else is developing. And so the options that are in front of the board and committee include adopting the next gen bar exam, perhaps as a bridge. So that would mean adopting the next gen bar exam as the state bar is developing in the longer term future a California specific exam. If the state bar does that, it can choose whether or not it wants to also add alongside the next gen bar exam a California specific component or not. Another option would be to just adopt the next gen bar exam kind of permanently, or at least for the long term, with or without a California specific component. And then the last option is essentially adopting Nevada's exam. So instead of developing our own exam kind of inspired by what Nevada's doing, it would be working with Nevada to use much of the materials that they've already invested in and developed. I'm looking at our clock, so I think I'll skip a few slides and get to our decision points. So what our consultants wanted to also do for the committee at the meeting was point out or spotlight the decision points that are really in front of them. Really try to simplify what needs to be done here because it can feel really complex and kind of endless, the different permutations to consider. So decision point one that was under consideration at the last meeting was, really just thinking about it from this perspective of should California develop its own exam or not? And what our decision makers can consider in thinking about that is whether or not developing a California specific exam means pursuing an exam that looks like what the Supreme Court had directed the state bar to explore in October 2024. And that had a number of new subject areas and skills and I'm assuming our members here are relatively familiar or not. It could be that the Board of Trustees recommends to the Supreme Court that we pursue a California specific exam that looks different, and that is on the table. Another question, again, should if the state bar is going to pursue developing its own exam, is it more appropriate to adopt a bridge exam in the short term so that it has a longer on-ramp to develop its own exam? And then lastly, again, a question to ask is whether avoiding cost and risk is a priority. And if that is a priority, then it may lead decision makers to pursue a different option. And what asking these questions ultimately lead to are a number of consequences. So the timeline and resources that the state bar invests into developing exams certainly is impacted depending on how you answer these questions. The ongoing investment is certainly impacted if the state bar decides to kind of permanently pursue its own California specific exam. That is not just an upfront development cost, it's ongoing cost. And whether or not a bridge option provides some stability in the short term. And I'm going to move through these a little more briefly just because of our time here. But the next decision point was what is the composition and the content of the examination? I laid out these different options that are available, but certainly if California decides to develop its own exam, whether or not dropping essays is appropriate is a question that our decision makers need to ask, and there's some evidence for that. The content of the exam certainly needs to align with some of the resources the state bar has developed over the years to ensure that the exam's measuring what it needs to measure, and we have a job analysis and other efforts over the years that have kind of just described that. And so there's a number of questions to be answered when it comes to what is the exam content itself. Decision point 3 that the committee is really starting to think about is how the exam aligns with California's needs. That could lead a decision maker to believe that developing a California specific exam really is the only way to test California subjects and skills. And so full autonomy may be a preference. However, there's other perspectives that perhaps, like for example, maybe the next gen bar exam kind of sufficiently covers general subjects and skills, and that may be appropriate for entry level practice. These are the questions that our decision makers are asking on this front. And then the consultants broke it down by kind of development and then administration. So there's a number of decision points related to the administration and kind of the logistics of the exam. Decision point 4, what are the priorities for exam delivery? And this is maybe it's one of the most important areas. Where and how applicants can take the exam. Today, we are back to kind of large test centers at several sites across the country or across the state. Whether or not that is sufficient, I think, is a question for related to administration. Flexibility in administration is certainly something we've discussed with stakeholders over several years. That includes remote exams, which I know is an important topic, but it also includes whether or not exams, held over one window twice a year is the only way to do this. Especially if you're thinking about an exam where a California specific component is added, there may be kind of flexibility in how that is administered, perhaps separately. Maybe it's a module or something like that. And how the exam will be scored. On that front, the committee is considering whether or not a future exam could be bifurcated. So what Nevada offers is a multiple choice component where students can take that component of the exam separately, and they can take that even while they're in law school. At the December meeting, the Nevada State Bar kind of made their case about why they believe that's an effective way to offer multiple choice exam. That brings up questions about how to kind of determine whether or not someone's kind of collectively passed all of the elements of the bar examination. So if the committee ultimately chooses some of these approaches, there'll need to be ongoing discussions to kind of nail down what the scoring approach will look like and kind of what flexibility is offered to test takers. And of course, the technology risks and impacts. Any of these choices will raise technology questions. If it's the next gen bar exam, there is a platform that students will need to use in person at the venues, and there is an internet connection requirement there. That is a technology risk. And of course, if flexibility is important to a member of the committee or the board because they still see some future where perhaps remote testing is a possibility in the short or long term, being clear and kind of assessing what the technology risks are needs to play a role in any choice. And of course, adopting any technology comes with resource requirements. The state bar needs to procure and maintain technology platforms. It needs to regularly do its due diligence to find the appropriate vendors. And there's a lot of internal and external resources that need to be developed to make sure that folks understand how to appropriately use those technologies. So a lot of the kind of sub decisions that will need to be considered as the committee's getting through this. Okay, I'm sorry I moved through that briskly, but again, I'm trying to be respectful of our time. Let me stop there before I try to quickly summarize the law school survey. Any questions about kind of what the committee has in front of it on these options or the decision points that they are considering? And I know it's still early in the discussion, but if you have questions, I'm happy to respond. Or if you have feedback on any of these points, happy to receive that as well. Okay, let me move to the second portion then, and I'll move through that quickly. Part of the information that's been shared with certainly the Board of Trustees at its November meeting was a preliminary reports from a survey of law school deans that followed a quarterly meeting that we held earlier in the year. And I want to share just some of those trends quickly here. There we go. So I shared with you the options that are being considered by the committee and the board. Those same options were offered in the survey, and we asked law school deans to rank their preference of those options. And at the highest level, just to give you the top lines, when looking at all law schools combined, the preference at that time was to adopt the next gen bar exam and add a California specific component. Looking at just the ABA schools, the preference was to adopt the next gen bar exam without a California specific component. And then the CALs and unaccredited schools, preferred a different approach. Interestingly, the lowest ranking option for the ABA schools and the CALs was to develop a California bar exam consistent with the October 2024 Supreme Court order, and to, in the interim, develop a bridge exam where the state bar uses its multiple choice questions developed with its agreement with Kaplan and continue to develop its own essays and performance tests. So again, these perspectives may shift over time, but at the time that we administered this survey, which I believe was in fall, these were the preferences and the lowest ranked options for each law school type. We also asked the schools to rank the exam development considerations that they thought were important or very important. And just briefly highlight a few here, the use of professional test developers was a factor that was provided in the survey. Cost and access considerations, portability of the exam score, and all the way down to remote administration and innovative test design. When we asked our law school deans these questions, 100% of the ABA law school deans reported that use of a professional test developer was very important or important. And the top rated factors varied for the CALs and unaccredited. But interestingly, that there was kind of a consensus across the ABA schools that professional test developers was a key consideration. And I'm going to just jump over these, which just laid out the numbers a little more briefly or in a little more detail. This is attached to the presentation, so please do refer to that. We also asked all of the law schools if the state bar were to develop a California specific component to include alongside the next gen bar exam, what is the primary purpose and what administration mode should be used for delivering that. And the options provided for purpose were one, to assess the minimum competence in California specific law and skills, or two, to ensure understanding of essential concepts and requirements to prevent misconduct and protect the public. The reason that we offered those two options was to get a sense of if there's a California specific component, is it an exam that measures and tests a lot of the same elements that the rest of the bar exam does? Or is it, as I mentioned, kind of a module or some other component that really is trying to get at other skills or knowledge that isn't tested on the bar exam? 53% of ABA law school deans emphasize that understanding those essential concepts related to preventing misconduct and protecting the public should be the primary purpose for that component. So I think that's an interesting finding. Because we would have some flexibility in how we deliver that California specific component, we also asked how it should be administered. And the options were administered as the second half of the second day of the bar exam. So the next gen bar exam would be 1.5 days. It would be after that on day 2. Another option would be to administer it remotely and on demand, perhaps through like a module, or to administer it remotely on specific dates up to 4 times per year. And the ABA schools recommended that this component be a second day attached to the administration of the next gen bar exam. And again, some of the raw data, or at least, excuse me, the figures related to those findings are included in the attachment, and I'm going to skip over those. And then lastly, I know we're just a few minutes over time. If the state bar were to adopt the next gen bar exam for a period of years so that it could develop a California specific exam in the future, we would want to ensure that that bridge is kind of appropriate in length. And so we asked the law schools kind of what is the minimum period of time that would be needed as a bridge between adopting some interim exam and the future exam. And across all law schools, the minimum period that was provided was 4.1 years. And for the ABA schools, they recommended the longest period, which was on average 4.4 years, roughly 4.5 years. Okay. And I'm sorry that we have now kind of hit the clock, but again, I'm happy to open the floor if anyone has any initial reactions to some of the options or some of the data that was shared. I want to at least provide the opportunity to hear from you.
I see a hand from Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Thank you, Cody. Thank you, Natalie. I realize we don't have time to discuss this, but if I could just point out two things that I think we're in dire need of more information of at the upcoming meetings. They had the same problem we just had today, which was I attended the December 5th meeting remotely, and the CBE received lots of information and lots of presentations, but had little time to discuss anything. And the same thing has happened to us here today. And I believe that's because we're in the early stages and there's lots of information the bar examiners obviously want to give out before discussion. I think this group likely has much more insight than the Cal Law School deans or the ABA deans, because we're the people on the ground that actually know about the bar exam. And I do feel that some of those information points, while very relevant and very important, are also quite limited and not as insightful as what this group might provide. I also would like to just suggest two things that we're in need of. And one is cost information, and the other is information about the Kaplan situation. I have provided public comment many times to the Committee of Board Examiners and the Board of Trustees. And one of the things I find myself unable to comment on is the use of Kaplan materials or questions, because I am unfamiliar with whether or not the February situation has created any litigation or dispute with Kaplan, or whether or not that is an ongoing valid contract at the State Bar. And it is a way to provide questions in a Nevada-based model, a California-based model, or any other way. So some information about the status of the Kaplan. The publicly available information, obviously, is all I'm asking for. But if we could know what the situation is with those questions and what they might be fairly used for or not, I think would be helpful to assessing these options more generally, and also the cost of these options. As much as a lot of us might prefer that costs not drive any of these decisions, it's in fact going to drive these decisions, and it's driving the legislature's interest as well by demanding audits and etc. So in my assessment, it would help very much to have a cost comparison of these presented to either the CBE, where we could watch, or presented to us, or provided in some way, so that we could have a fuller and better discussion of all these options as the CBE moves through it in its next meetings.
Yeah, Susan, those are two great points. And I think I can respond to both of them actually pretty quickly. As part of the legislation that was passed after the February bar exam, we are required to produce sorry, excuse me, there was legislation, there was also amendments to the Supreme Court's rules. We are required to produce a cost benefit analysis and a comparison between any alternatives to the next gen bar examination. So there a cost benefit analysis of all the options, but also a comparison between the next gen exam and any alternative we pursue. So the consultants that we have hired are helping the State Bar build that cost benefit analysis report, and that will be certainly presented to the committee and the Board of Trustees, and perhaps depending on our schedule here, a discussion about that specifically can occur here. And then just to touch on the Kaplan questions, we still have an ongoing agreement with them. Part of recent discussions that have occurred with the Committee of Bar Examiners were related to enhancing the State Bar's content validation process and subject matter expert review process. And so we will continue to receive questions developed under that agreement, and then continue to review them through our enhanced process for the foreseeable future. Mary, I see.
Thank you, Cody.
Oh yeah, no problem, Susan.
I also would love to have more time to discuss this. I have
Certainly.
so many thoughts, but there is one thing that I wanted to share with you that does not seem to be maybe well known with the Board of Trustees and the Committee of Bar Examiners. So um, when we talk about the content of the California exam, and we've got the MBE questions, which everyone is using nationally, and then we have our California subjects. But I don't know that it's really widely known to them, or maybe even the Supreme Court, that most of those subjects that are being tested are not being tested on California law. They are being tested on general concepts in wills and trusts and business associations and remedies and community property. So really the only subject that is currently being tested that is quite unique to California is professional responsibility, where they're testing both the national rules and the California rules with specificity. Now, some years ago, they did add California Evidence and California Civ Pro. So there's a few little sprinkling of rules there that they test or the students are eligible to know. But I just think this is kind of getting lost in the shuffle, and the idea that we would have a whole second half of a day of an exam to test on a few PR rules seems overkill, right? Now, if they wanted to test admin law, we could throw that guy in. But I just wanted to kind of put that out because that doesn't seem to be well known. And I look forward to having a more robust discussion when we have time.
That's a great point, Mary. There's a lot of different discussion about subjects, topics, skills, and I think that provides a little more detail about kind of how those are split amongst general concepts and California specific. I will take note, and maybe we can certainly in our future discussion of the committee spotlight that, but you're right, maybe some more time here to get into those details with the members here will be of value in the future. And Carly, I think your hand's also raised.
Yeah, and again, I echo Susan and Mary. I'd love to discuss all of this more, but just a quick note on any sort of bridge exam. I guess I just kind of wanted to express concern largely for that, and just kind of how difficult that makes, I think pretty much everyone on this calls, how difficult that makes that for everybody. Developing different curriculum and, how that rollout would look, dealing with repeaters who are taking different exams, the first time versus their repeat time. So just kind of taking all of that bridge exam into consideration. I think, and kind of the timing of that would be really important information for all of us to have. I think that sounds like a potentially easy fix, but in reality I think that there's a lot of consequences to thinking about a bridge exam. So I just wanted to voice that, and, the opportunity to discuss that in more detail would be great.
Sure. And that's maybe a good example of where the survey that we shared really is a snapshot. I think we were maybe even a little surprised at the figures of the number of years that were shared for kind of the length needed for that bridge. But maybe as the discussion becomes a little more clear about what a bridge looks like and kind of what changes that would entail, that number might change and actually might become a much longer kind of on-ramp period than we see here. So some maybe what I'm getting at is probably a topic worth revisiting.
Thanks.
Well, I'm sorry that my presentation ran long, but I appreciate the members sticking with us to touch on those topics.
And one thing I might note is that some of these questions that were asked came from a prior conversation with the law school deans. And so along the way, I do appreciate the participation here. And when you're thinking about the frame for the future conversation, think about what we talked about today, the elements you saw that were important and the elements that you want to see. Thank you for the work that's been done and for the insight you'll continue to provide. That will turn it back to you, Kris.
Oh yeah, I believe that concludes everything on the agenda. Natalie, or can we adjourn this meeting?
Yes.
Excellent. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.